Welcome to Unscripted, an IICRC video program. Today, we are going to present a topic that every cleaning and restoration company needs to hone their skills and drive more revenue: odor control services. So whether it's the lingering scent of smoke, pet accidents, are they really accidents? Or more severe situations like biohazard and death scene cleanup, mastering odor control is a critical skill. We will discuss the most challenging situations, focus on the tools and the products you need, and cover common but challenging client relationship issues when the job doesn't go exactly as planned. So sit back and enjoy this episode of Unscripted. I have with me today three IICRC approved instructors who are experts in any odor removal situation. Let's have them introduce themselves and tell us a bit about their expertise. And ladies first, Kara, why don't you start us off?
Hi, thank you. I'm Kara Driscoll, and I am an IICRC instructor. I teach WRT, ASD, OCT, AMRT, TCST, FSRT. I think that covers them. It's easier to say I teach all of the restoration courses except for the commercial drawing. So I probably just should have said it that way. And I've been in the industry my whole working life since I was, well, let me not tell you how old I was because then you could calculate my age, but I've been doing it now for 30 years, 3 decades. And grew up in my parents' business, and I've been really blessed to be on the distributor side of the business, manufacturing side of the business. Worked for a very, very large restoration company for many, many years as their technical trainer. And in the last few years, I've branched out on my own. I have my own IICRC school, Playing with Fire, and I own a temporary labor business, Orange Dog Labor.
Kara, I have to admit, I'm impressed. Not only did you know all the acronyms, it seems like you're great at evading your age, mentioning your age. So that was perfect.
I
Yeah.
work hard at that. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the introduction. And let's go to Mark. Tell us a little about yourself, what you do, and see if you can top Kara.
No, I can't. Might as well give that up front. I started in 1974 at the ripe age of 19. I went to work 3 years in a hospital making minimum wage and loved it. All the nice people I met and the things that we do. And I loved the cleaning, but it was going to be a long career in law enforcement. Got hired by the sheriff's office and got laid off not long after with a lot of other people. So I kept cleaning, waiting for my permanent job. And that was 51 years ago. So I guess that permanent job's not coming around. So I ended up getting tutored by Carl Williams and Mike West, who basically started the whole education industry in our industry, along with Cliff Stocknick and other people, as Gary would know. And worked out real well. I ended up having a cleaning service run since 1978 on referrals only. It's still active. We're in the process of selling it now. I started writing textbooks in 2013, and just completed my 11th different textbook in cleaning last week, and we're working on about 4 or 5 more. We've gone deep into custodial training because it's the most untrained area of our industry with the most people. And a lot of companies are starting to jump on that same bandwagon because they see it as a great mission field to help a lot of people in great volume.
I'd say, Mark, you don't need anything more to do. It sounds like a busy schedule, but
No,
thank you for giving up some time today
but I
and
love
joining
time with
us.
my peers. It's great.
Yeah, and I know you're up early every morning. So,
Mhm.
all right. Last but not least, Gary, tell us about yourself.
I've been in the industry now since 1979. Built 2 businesses, one in Corpus Christi, Texas, one in Tampa, Florida. And in 1988, I joined a company called Unsmoke Systems. And for the sole purpose of developing marketing and education, started the first hands-on school with Cliff Zlotnick in 1988. And for the last 35 years, been training and have my designation in FSRT, WRT, OCT. I teach those three, as well as trauma scene cleanup, TCST. Now, used to teach carpet cleaning, but it wasn't my passion. So in 2008, I joined the two companies, Unsmoke Systems and Dry's, came together and merged to form a family of companies called Legend Brands. And I came in as one of the education coordinators, teaching all of the different types of classes for all of the organization. So that's kind of my background. My passion is odor and fire and water. And it's all about the basic principles.
I'm like an attorney. I feel like, Your Honor, we have our experts. They're qualified. They're gonna testify. So let's get right to it. And I'd love to hear you each talk about why you think becoming an odor control expert, the very best you can in the field, is important. So just a brief comment there. Mark, why is this important to you?
Well, odor is often what's left behind when the cleaning is. And I think, unfortunately, that the odor does need to follow the cleaning process itself. You need to remove all that extra debris. That usually removes most of the odor, and use the odor to follow that by masking or covering over at least a better scent than was left by the cleaning, but something more pleasant. But also, we want to make sure that we get a safer environment than when we started with. I learned a lot from Gary. I actually took a class from Gary years ago at the Academy of Textiles and Flooring. He was actually one of my mentors in that process. But as we look at the odor removal, we also have to be very, very concerned over the scents that we're leaving behind. I think we don't often stress that enough. Putting a product down to kill bacteria is wonderful. To do something that's going to do process in all different facets is going to make a safe environmental or a safer area or overall condition than we've started with is great. Except the issue is we have to be careful what kind of scent we leave behind. We're looking at sometimes things too perfumey, and customers don't like that. They'd almost rather have the cat smell. And we think that's a great job. And then they, for days later, they got to deal with it. And it's a bad omen on the kind of work we've done. We have to let the customer choose what kind of scent that they want. Very, very important. If we have multiple products in the truck that'll do the same thing, we need to give them a choice of what kind of scent that is, so they find that least offensive or most appealing. What I'd recommend is they take the gallon, choose a gallon container, and put a little bit on the caps and walk in and let them smell that, not tell them what it is, just say, this is what it may smell like when we're done. Which of these you prefer? And then give them a choice. I found that works miraculously to customer, let them feel that not only we've taken care of them, but the after scent won't be offensive. Or they also may have allergies to scents as well. Got to be very careful with that.
I can't imagine a customer wishing they had the cat smell back because the product had an odor.
It can happen.
I mean, this is an interesting world we live in, so I can see that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't vote for that, but I guess it could happen. Kara, let's go to you next. Why is this skill set so important to you?
I can't imagine very many jobs where it isn't an issue. I'm on the restoration side of the business, and there's the obvious ones like fire and smoke damage. I think about tobacco and nicotine cleanup. We have a lot to do now with marijuana and grow areas. And then, there's the not so pretty side of the business, the category 3s and decomposition scenes. But it's even, I've been on category 1 water damages where it wasn't necessarily the water that was causing the problem per se. It was when the water mixed with the 20-year-old dirty carpet and pad and just begins to give off that fragrant bacteria smell. To have an in-depth understanding of odors and remediation. I too, a lot like Mark, don't believe in just bringing in perfumes and covering things up with things that make it maybe smell better. I believe that people need to understand where odors come from, what creates that, and then you understand that, bring in the effective tools to remediate it. But there's not very many jobs in the restoration side of it that you won't encounter odors. So this just has to be a knowledge, a skill set that technicians in that arena need to have.
Now, Gary, you said this is a passion of yours. I've never heard anyone really say odors is a passion, but I heard you say it. Talk about why you think this is such an important topic.
Without understanding the basics of odor control, the basic principles, people will leave odors behind. And not just the odors, but with every odor comes a potential for, as Mark said, somebody getting sick from having a reaction to something. But it's not necessarily the fragrance. It really has to do with the source of the problem. Is the source of the problem making somebody sick? Does somebody have a potential allergy reaction, sensitivity, chemical sensitivity? And chemical sensitivity can relate not just to products, but to source residue. And you have so many different sources. You know, we talk about things that are neutralizable, things that are digestible, things that are oxidizable, things that are counteractable, or things that can be killed, such as water-related odors. Each one presents a different potential problem, and if people don't have the education, if people don't have the knowledge, you know, it goes back to something very basic and simple. When do you notice an odor? And if you ask somebody where did the odor come from and in what conditions did you smell that odor? And okay, I just said the word smell. Now you have something that is relating to, you know, what's causing the odor in the first place. If you asked me what something smelled like right now, I couldn't tell you. And I couldn't tell you because I had COVID at one time and lost my sense of smell. Not everybody has a good olfactory system. Olfactory meaning the area of your nose where you have cells and nerves and olfactory lobe and olfactory bulb and etc. So this is why people need the education. They need to know what they're looking for so that they can try to determine what they want to use to solve the odor. I think without going too much further, that would be a good synopsis.
Well, thank you, Gary. I have to think that you have to use products with odors in them, the scents Mark mentioned he lets his customers choose, but the end result is no odor. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, when everything's dry and back to normal. Okay. Let's do this.
You should be able to take a spray bottle with hot water, and you should be able to spray this on the surface to open the pores. And you should be able to have something to keep your nose from becoming accustomed to the odor. And if you hit it with a spray bottle with hot water, take a respirator off that has an organic vapor cartridge and put your nose to it. If there's no smell, there's no odor. If there's a smell, you got to solve it.
Yeah, exactly. I want to do this now. I want to name for each of you to name maybe 2 or 3 of the most challenging odors that you deal with, that your students, when they come to your classes, they're like, this is tough. I can't get this odor out. You know, we do that with stain removal. There's always a stain that won't come out. Let's focus on odors. And Kara, we're going to start with you. I'm going to write this down. So we want to make sure we cover these odors today. So Kara, what are your top 2 or 3 odors?
Top 2 or 3, definitely I call it nicotine or tobacco smoke. You've had that 30-year smoker in the house, and that's ridiculously difficult to get completely, to be rid of. Would definitely put up there after a smoke or a fire damage. That can be challenging. And I'm going to throw decomposition in, because that one really kind of burns into the brain permanently.
I have to say that's a bad one. Whether it's, I think a roadkill, you drive by it, it's like powerful.
Take
We don't
that.
want that in the house. We do
Yeah.
not want that.
It's been sitting in a building for a month. Take that and amplify it, and that's a really challenging odor to get rid of.
All right. Got Karis. Gary, how about you? Give us a couple.
What they use to sabotage abortion clinics, butyric acid.
What?
Butyric acid. Butyric acid, which is what they use. They make a gel out of it to sabotage abortion clinics. It's one of the worst odors you'll ever encounter. Another I would agree with Tara is death scene that's been sitting for weeks to months. That's going to give you a similar type odor. One other would be probably real bad cat urine, cat spray, along with skunk. Skunk can be challenging.
Now you mentioned cat
Yeah.
more than dog.
Well, cat urine, I think can be more challenging sometimes than dog. But dog urine can also be challenging. Again, it goes back to the basics. Where did the urine get to? Can you track it? What surfaces did it get to? It's not about the carpet and the pad. It's not about the subfloor, just the subfloor underneath the carpet and the pad. How about the framing behind it? How about when it heated up, the vapor being impregnated into the pores of the framing behind the walls and ceilings? And this is true whether it's regardless of the source. We can talk about all these different sources, but it's true. It's when that area bakes and the pores, when you heat up a surface.
Here comes another demonstration.
And you have pores or indentations. When these pores or indentations open up, the vapor gets impregnated deep into the pores of the surface. So when it's impregnated there and you don't get to it, you're still going to have odor. And that's where failure comes in.
Well,
to all the source.
yeah, that's no good at all. So thank you, Gary. We want to get rid of that source. Mark, I don't know if there's anything left for you. What do you think?
I guess they have to get creative here.
Okay, go ahead.
No, actually, I like real life examples. I have a customer that wanted me to get rid of the odor and a brand new carpet. And it turns out that the cats had sprayed the previous carpet till it was soaked into the subfloor, which is then concrete. And the new carpet was brand new. So I went in there and I found out that they had put new carpeting in. And I said, what did you seal the concrete out with, the odor out with? And they said he'd used a product from Home Depot that was designed to cover up the dark paint so you can put light paint over it. And I'm trying to keep this real generic so you can tell. And I said, we have to pull all the new carpet up and they have to seal the concrete, clean and seal it. And they really didn't want to do that, but they're trying to sell the house. And they are pulling all the brand new carpet up because they trusted somebody who didn't know what they were doing to try to seal up the concrete to get rid of the odor before they lay the carpet down. And they used the wrong type of product. And they ended up having to pull all the carpet up, cut all the seams. Of course, they never really pieced it together perfectly, and they were stuck. So that was a real challenge. People don't. I teach both the carpet classes I mentioned for commercial and residential, and people just don't want to pull. Technicians don't want to learn how to pull up the carpeting and decontaminate under everything as replace the padding, restretch everything, wash the back of the carpet whites out, air move it, and they should be getting around, roughly $300 a room. And they don't want to learn that. They just don't want to do carpet repairs or even hook up with a carpet repair technician to do that. And it's very challenging because people live with odors they don't have to. They do that a lot.
Yeah.
And, I mentioned earlier about the scents, getting rid of the scent. And I be careful what I'm saying here because I don't want to disparage anybody's product. But my 5 decades experience showed me that the odors that get really old when they seem really good initial tend to be the floral stuff. And the things that seem to linger longer with less complaints seem to be the non-floral things. But when you want to cover over an odor to get it pleasant, is how long it lasts makes a difference. I've noticed if the cat, let's make Gary's example is a great one. If the cat urines primarily in the kids' room because the cat lives in there a lot, and then they don't care how bad it smells all night, but if it's in the parents' bedroom, they don't want to smell it at all night because by the next morning, that smell becomes a literal word stink. It goes from nice to stink real fast. So you really got to get that odor out and give it time to work. And the last thing I would throw in here is technicians don't know how to give something called dwell time. Products need time to work. They often will blame the manufacturer. They don't like the product because it doesn't work, but they didn't give it time to work. And that's sad. They may misjudge a product. We see that even in stain removers that often goes with the odor. They'll use a product and they love it and they try and everything. Like on polyester, and it works great because it's non-water absorbent material. Then they'll try it on nylon or wool, it doesn't work, and they think the product's stupid, and they actually go back to the supplier to try to bring it back because they don't understand there's a difference between absorbency rates. They don't understand the product. And a lot of it is technician ignorance or just not understanding things or taking the time to learn it.
Yeah.
Just in addition to that, understanding that there's different categories of deodorizers and sometimes there's 3 different categories of deodorizers you can use on a particular odor, but you can't use them all at the same time. And you've got to use them independently. If one doesn't work, you've got another choice. And that doesn't mean a scented product necessarily, but if we don't use the right category of product, the scent can linger for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But one other thing I wanted to address, and that's sealers. Sealers, if you go to the store to buy a sealer, it says encapsulates and deodorizes on the product. There is not a sealer in the industry that has a chemical deodorizer in the product, not one. So then how do they deodorize? They say by surrounding, by encapsulating. Well, what happens when that sealer expands and the pores of that sealer open up and the vapor behind that sealer now pass through that 0.4 perm factor sealer? Now what do? That's called failure.
Odor resurrection.
That's why we need to deodorize chemically before we seal. We need to get over 90% of the odor out before we seal. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're still going to have a potential odor lingering, and that's exactly what can happen in that concrete. You put a sealer on there without deodorizing it first with whatever it takes to neutralize it, to eliminate it, to stop it from off-gassing, and then you seal it. But people don't want to go to that extent, and the consumer doesn't have the tools necessary to do all the step-by-step procedures.
Mark, you need to invent a sealer that will deodorize and do all the stuff Gary just talked about. And since it started here, this is our idea. We all get part of the profit. All right?
If you can patent something like that, I'm in.
I know of one product that claims that I've used it for years, but we're leaving this generic.
So let's do this. I want to talk about psychological odors because I think if you do the perfect job, the customer may still smell something. And Gary, let's go to you on this. Talk about that. Is this a common thing? And what do you do with the communication with the client when that happens?
It can be a common thing if you don't first set the stage with the customer up front. And that is on a scale of 1 to 10, we have odor levels from 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10. 0 would be no odor whatsoever. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how do they perceive the odor that's in there? And they might say it's a 6 or it's a 7 or it's a 10 or whatever it is okay. And I would jot that down on a pad of paper. Make sure that they understand that we're gonna treat by layering. Okay, odors are treated by layering. Sometimes stains are taken out by layering as well. You get a little bit, and then you get a little bit more, then you get a little bit more. Well, we have to start by not only deodorizing at the beginning when we first start, but by detoxifying as well, by making it a safer environment, because whatever gas is coming off of that surface, and that's what an odor is, it's a gas. Whatever gas is coming off of that surface has the potential to make somebody sick. Has the potential to make somebody sick. Okay? And it's going to come off when it's warm and humid, because every surface has pores or indentations, and the more pores or indentations the surface has, the more that surface has the ability to pull in and hold odors, and they become natural wicks where the landing areas are for those odors. So we have to be able to remove the source. We have to be able to clean the source area. We have to be able to penetrate a deodorizer deep into the pores of the surface, and then on structural surfaces we can potentially seal. Okay, but we have to understand psychological odor is what people think they smell based on their experience, past impressions, or suggestions. It's kind of like a skunk odor. Drive by a skunk and you get this horrendous smell of skunk. And then for the next several hours, you still have that smell. 5 hours later, you can still describe that smell perfectly. Why can you still explain it perfectly? Because it's in your psyche, it's in your brain. To overcome that, it depends upon how did that odor affect that person. If that odor affected that person because somebody misapplied a product, which I recently consulted on one like that in Georgetown, Texas, and somebody was applying a quote sanitizer inside a ductwork with a ULV fogger. Turns out the sanitizer that they were applying wasn't a sanitizer. It was a deodorizer that's not even approved for fogging. And it had a smell to it. And instead of using that product was labeled on the label for 3 to 6 ounces per gallon of water, and they used it straight because they thought they had the sanitizer, which was a concentrate, which was a ready-to-use product. They thought the technician thought they had picked up the sanitizer. Well, what do you think that did? Well, when they fogged it in there, it blew out throughout the house, and they had this gray smoke going through the house in the form of this deodorizer. And the customer, the woman, the wife, okay, from that point on, thought that there was odor in her house. And I can't blame her. I can't blame her one bit. Even after they replaced the ductwork, even after they cleaned everything in the house, she still thought that there was a smell. That's called psychological odor, because the contractor that I was working with told me, in fact, Gary, there's no smells left. I had multiple people come in, test surfaces with a spray bottle and hot water. There's no smells left. You know, without her moving into another house, she's probably never going to get that smell out of her mind. That's a true psychological odor. Is there a way to solve that? Probably not.
Okay, Gary, thank you for that. But I want to know what Mark has to say. Mark still has a cleaning company. Mark, if you're faced with a customer who says, I smell it, and you're like, no, you don't, what do you say to her?
I have the
Oh,
world-class.
let me restate. What do you say to the customer? I shouldn't assume it's a woman.
It is.
Mark said it, not me.
It's one of those long stories. I'll give you the basic because of the time restraints. Lady was in her early 30s. She had two boys around 7, 8, and a husband. And I cleaned her carpet, and she was real happy. She said, "Remember that sofa we had out in the middle of the room?" I said, "I'll just leave it there." I said, "I'm coming back in next day or something to clean the sofa." It's a simple cotton, so I cleaned it, real piece of cake. And then a couple days later, she said, "Mark, the sofa smells. It didn't smell before you cleaned it." I know I didn't do anything wrong. So I went back and I asked her what was the smell. She said, "I don't know, it just smells." So I treated it with some deodorant because it was okay for the fabric and wouldn't linger and it was fine for it. And she called me back a few days later, said, "Mark, it smells worse than it ever did." I said, "Where does it smell?" She says, "I don't know, it just smells." So I went back and treated it again. I'm like, "Oh no." And then it happened a third time. And then the fourth time, I said, it was on a Monday. And she said, "Mark, the problem is that my two sons and were laughing at me because they don't smell it. My husband said I'm crazy, and they were laughing at me. By the second or third time, now they smell it." And the soap was still in the middle of the room, supposedly. Well, I went back and I said, "Look, I'm going to open up, get some fresh air in the house," because it was summer in California. It was dry. And I said, "Get some fresh air in there. And this is on Monday. I'll come back on Thursday morning and see what we have to do because I can't keep making trips, but I know there's nothing we did." And she was like, "I know it's nothing you did, but I want you to take care of the problem." So Wednesday night late, about 9 o'clock at night, she calls me up. She said, "I want to apologize to you." I said, "What?" I said, "We moved the sofa back the last 2 days against the wall where it went, and we smelt it was in the wall. It turned out it was a rotting rodent inside the wall, and they cut it open, and sure enough, there was a dead rodent there. They were smelling that, but no longer." She was crazy, the poor woman. Her husband now believed her when she said things, so did the kids. It kind of worked out for the glories if they had her patch a big hole. But you can smell things and not even be the same item. It could be around there. Trying to pinpoint smell can be tricky too. I love the comments that Gary made. He was dead on it. But sometimes you can't even figure out where it is. It can be a number of things. I kept smelling urine many years ago in the bedroom that I was the master bedroom, and I couldn't pinpoint it. And a black light found a little dot of a cat urine, just a dot of it. That's all it was. And we found it with a black light. And I don't have the greatest trust in black lights. They can have issues, but there's where a moisture meter wouldn't pick up the salts, but we did find it. So it can be very difficult to actually find the source when a lot of items are in the room. It can be a little difficult at court and occasionally at times.
Yeah, and that odor in someone's head it's a real tough argument to have. But Kara, you must have a great way to convince the customer, no, there's no odor. Tell us about it.
I don't know sometimes if there's convincing certain people, but from the very beginning of a job that has an odor or a client mentions an odor, the conversation needs to start and it needs to continue. One of the biggest mistakes I made years ago, I see people make today is like, well, if I don't mention it, maybe they won't smell it. Or if I don't say anything about it and bring it to their attention, then maybe they won't say anything about it. And I'd rather, if there's if somebody thinks they smell something, be it real or not, I'd rather we go ahead and have that conversation up front. I also teach what Gary talks about from the very beginning of a job, just having a conversation with a client about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense is that odor? Because I don't have a very good sense of smell. So I think it's from years of inhaling chemicals in this industry, but I'm not going to smell things as well as people who have a very sensitive sense of smell. And so using that scale to get on the same page as them, if they're coming in saying, "Whoa, it's so strong, it's a 10." And I'm like, "Man, I barely notice it." It's not necessarily about me, is it? It's about their perception. So I always try to get on the same page as the client to what their perception of an odor is. And towards the end of jobs where odors should be remediated, if we've done our job right as cleaners and restorers, if they're still complaining about an odor, I typically do one of two things before I say, "Oh, well, too bad." I don't say it exactly that way, but one of the things I'll do is say, well, take me to exactly where you smell it the strongest. And a lot of times, well, I mean, it's just in this room. No, tell me where, and we'll walk around the walls and the corners and the furniture. And because I really want to try to get them psychologically to narrow down what they think they smell. And that's been very helpful where people are like, oh, maybe it just isn't that bad. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh.
The other thing I've done is that if somebody's just really thinks they smell something and I'm going around the room with them, I'll bring in somebody else, have another technician go by the job, another PM go by the job and say, listen, I need a fresh nose on this job because this client swears they're still smelling something. We've done everything or we don't smell something. Sometimes, you get, like Gary had mentioned as well, you get acclimated to an odor. You've been working on the same job for days or weeks. This happens a lot with decomp scenes and fire damages. Maybe it's time to get a fresh nose in there. And then if they come back and say, yeah, it's faint, but I can still smell it. All right, I've got more work to do on the remediation side.
I like that angle of having the customer pinpoint. Oh, hold on. Gary needs to show us a prop.
No, it comes back to a spray bottle with hot water.
Can't mention products, Gary. No products. Oh, water's okay.
This is not a product. This is just a spray bottle. And it comes back to a spray bottle with hot water and opening up the pores and having the customer smell that. And do they smell it? Oh, I don't smell anything when you hit it with the hot water. Okay, then there's no smell right there.
Right.
Let's try another
Good.
spot. Going back to what Kara just said. Let's try another spot. We've got to identify where that gas is coming from. What is the source? We can have vapor impregnated into the surfaces that's going to give off the odor, but that's not the source. The source is the main place that has the residue. If we don't solve the main place where the residue is, we're still going to have the smell.
That's assuming we have a real odor, right? And not
Assuming we have a real odor.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said, Kara, we start at the beginning and we work with them on each surface that we're cleaning, deodorizing. How does this smell to you now? Put your nose to it. I don't smell anything. Then you would say that there's no odor there. Yes, let me jot that down. We can rule that out. And I do this all the way through the job. It's just like Mark was talking when he's cleaning a carpet. He can have them check the carpet. He can take and hit a spot with hot water. He can take a paper towel like this and he can step on the paper towel. He can take a clip or a clamp and he can lift it up with a clip and he can have them smell it. And if there's no smell, there's no smell.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We need to move on to another topic. Those watching want to know, what should I use? What chemicals, what products? And that's a huge question. And we have to do this quickly. But let's start with you, Mark. When we think about what you might need to locate the odors and things that you should have on the truck, the types of products. So Mark, give us a couple ideas, then we'll go to Kara and then Gary.
Well, I think the best cleaning tool overall, outside of chemistry, is something that the cleaning industry stole from the great water damage and disaster restoration folks that's even sitting in front of me. As we took their moisture meters and we turned them into what's called urometers, because if you prong the carpet downward with the two prongs, you'll end up with some urine salts almost all the time. And if the carpet is actually dry but has the urine in it, it'll go off. And sometimes we see a dark spot in a carpet and they've used a lot of soap or home use products, or they go to big box stores to buy cleaning products and try to do it themselves. Use a lot of residue, and the residue will stick to the shoes and different soils in the airborne, and it'll turn it dark. But there's actually a urine stain underneath it, and it will prong. And with enough prong, you usually get at least some beep. The problem is if it's a rainy day and people are walking around in shoes or something on the carpet, then, or if it's still wet, you won't be able to tell. It's much more difficult. The moisture
Yeah.
meter. The black lights do have advantage. You have to be usually in a certain um, strength to do that with the light going under the carpet, or you have to have enough darkness in the room. And sometimes there's home use products with optical brighteners that'll make it glow somewhat similar to urine. I've seen issues where large apartment companies will go into a tenant that's moved out and they'll use the black light. And in litigation with this too, they'll go in and they'll show all these spots and say you had an animal in here, and they never did. And they were the only tenant ever lived on that carpet, but it's home use product they just spotted the carpet with, and it glows like urine, and they have to replace all the carpet for something that they didn't do, and they can't prove it. So we'll go with a moisture meter and see if there's any salts anywhere and prove it. So that's a major tool right there. You have to make sure you have the right mixing devices. Gary's story about the people putting the straight product through the air ducts was a great example for multiple reasons here as well, is dilution products matter. These companies spend a lot of time engineering these products for us professional wise. And if it says 2 ounces, it's meant as 2 ounces. 1 ounce doesn't do better. It usually creates more residue or stickiness or some other problems. You've got to mix things to direction. And we don't think we spend enough time teaching people how to mix products and even measurements, or even down to the ounces or meters and things that we need to look at in a chart. We need to teach them more of that and stress that more. And that includes me too.
Who would have thought a measuring cup would be a tool we need?
Wow, what a concept.
Wow. Hey, Gary, you showed us what the uronometer, what's it called, Mark? What?
Urometer.
You showed us what that is, but
Here's
you have to have a black light there too.
Yeah,
I don't.
I think they work in
Oh.
tandem.
Gary.
Okay.
I have a miniature black light.
Okay. That counts.
That's a miniature black light.
We're going to rename you Mr. Gadget. Mark, thank you for that. Kara, anything to add to that?
I would, as far as favorite tools, I'm not a big chemical person. It's just,
Okay.
I think that there's some other better, faster ideas out there or tools. I'm a big fan of oxidizers. So as much as they have there's a lot of hazards with using them. I mean, you have to use them with care, with caution. I am a fan of ozone. I am a fan of chlorine dioxide. So because probably a lot of the jobs that I'm on are going to be organic in nature, and oxidizers work very, very effectively with organic based odors. I like, and I'm primarily talking gases here, obviously, but there are liquid oxidizers that work very, very well when you're cleaning up some type of protein residue, protein fire, or a decomp scene. But I rely heavily on oxidizers for a lot of my odor remediation after source removal, after cleaning, after going through the proper odor remediation procedures. That's sort of that's definitely one that I rely on heavily and have had great success with.
Yeah. So several good points here. I think we need to stress cleaning first, clean and then deodorize, then do your odor removal. Sometimes you need that chemical just to enter a building, maybe because it smells so bad, but that's for yourself. But Kara mentioned something interesting. She said ozone is an example. And this is where technicians need to know what they're going to use on the source of the odor. So Gary, let me ask you this. Ozone works on smoke and those types of odors. Does it work on cats? Cat smells?
I typically would not use ozone on cats.
See, it works great on one, but not the other.
Yeah. It really, that's why I mentioned at the very beginning that there's different treatments.
Yep.
And knowing your treatments, if you have odors that are not all fire odors are oxidizable.
Right.
Not all, I wouldn't use oxidizers on water-related odors. That would not be, possibly for structure after I've done everything else, to get the last remaining small amount of odor. A lot of people like to use something like chlorine dioxide once they've gotten it down to a 1 or a 2 odor level. And sometimes that'll work. It just depends upon what the odor is, where the odor is, and as to what the treatment is. It's just like with Traumacine, we can use odor counteractants in the form of a citrus solvent. We could use a digestible enzyme type deodorizer. We could use a oxidizer, either a liquid like hydrogen peroxide, chlorine bleach. Chlorine dioxide can be in either liquid or gaseous form, ClO2. So it's not a matter of brand. It's a matter of using the right, when I'm dealing with water related odors, I'm gonna go for a biocide, which could be a disinfectant or sanitizer or even a sterilant. And even on those bottles, it tells people that they can use on all these different types of odors. But in reality, they're geared for water-related odors. They're not geared for a fire and smoke odor. They're not geared for, necessarily, maybe part of it would be used with Traumacine, but then you have other odors in the Traumacine that you wouldn't use that you'd use in addition to that, not together. And it goes back to what Mark said earlier. You got to follow the label, especially when you're dealing with a regulated product like biocides, water-related, something to use on water-related odors. If you don't follow the label, you're actually violating the law in most countries.
Mm-hmm.
So, besides following the label for safety and for benefit of doing the right thing and getting it done correctly, you got to follow the label because it might be the law. And it's a violation of federal law to use a product in a manner inconsistent with its labeling.
Yeah. Good info. So
Hope that answers.
Yeah, that does. So a lot to memorize, but we don't need to do that as long as you know where to get the information and follow directions. I know when I teach classes, I tell my students, you can't memorize everything, but you can read and you can look at the label and follow it. So there's that. Kara, we're going to go to you next.
Okay.
Because we're talking about products.
Mm-hmm.
And some clients might ask, are these chemicals hazardous to my health or to my family and pets? They're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So what can a professional do knowing the products are safe? Generally, they're made to be used. What can they do to respond to that? What would you say?
I feel like this is a setup, Jeff.
Not a setup. I would do it to one of the guys, but not you.
I'm going to be honest. I teach all of my students and I practice this myself, that if somebody has questions about health concerns, happy to supply them with the the safety data sheet, the SDS, that they can take to their physician and ask if there's any reason for them to be concerned. I get very concerned when in a lot of the products we use out there, again, I know I'm more heavy on the restoration side, but, our botanicals, for example, that, they're safe. Well, I mean, I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm not saying what individual reactions might be to a product. And so when it comes to people asking me questions about could a product, I try not to use the C word when I'm out with chemical. I don't say the word chemical when I'm out with clients, but because then it does sort of set that off, that, oh, is this, when you hear chemical, it's strong. What does that mean? I tell them I'm happy to provide you all the documentation on the product, and you need to ask your physician because I'm not a doctor, and it's the truth. So I'm sorry if that's lame, but to me, it's the safest way to answer what could be a potentially tricky question from a client.
Yeah, I've had clients in my past where if they brought up those types of questions, it was a red flag. You
Yep.
knew that maybe it's a psychological concern of theirs. Maybe they're not really sensitive, but you have to play it safe. Mark, anything you would add to that?
Well, I think getting people to mix is probably the single hardest thing. I noticed that I have a friend of mine who does a lot of research independently. He's been an incredible help to me over the many years. He's got, between him and I, we have over 100 years field experience. So we draw from each other. And he mentioned that he bought he also manufactures a brand now, but he did a lot of research on the different brands used for deodorizing in the carpet and fabric side. And he said that the average person glugs this amount versus measuring, and that there was a lot less needed in the bottle that even some of the manufacturers recommended, because they have to balance between what they need you to use to make a living and what they need to do to make it perfectly applicable. So following those directions is always the better route to go. And otherwise it kills it. It does the job with usually that, right? It should be zeroed in exactly what the manufacturer says, but the cleaners are using so much more than they need to. They're wasting their own money. They could be counteracting what they're trying to do. And it's really sad. And I've done that myself. We've all grown up in the glug industry. We learned from things. I did about 8 years of custodial myself on top of everything else. And I know we live in a glug world and we can't seem to break that. And it's too bad, because the products we're using and spending so much money for can actually underperform when they're overmixed. Never mind the safety issues and the other crazy stuff. You're wasting your own money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad.
It is. Gary, anything to add? And if whatever you say, I'm going to start with you on the next question.
The original question here was,
I don't remember. No, just kidding. It was if a customer asks, are these products you're using, are they hazardous to my health, to my
Okay.
kids, to my pets?
yeah, and I would answer the same as Kara.
Okay.
But I would take it a step further. Most products in our industry fall under a category of generally regarded as safe, GRAS. And most of the time when people are asking a question, if something's going to hurt them, or when somebody makes a phone call and they say, I got sick from your chemicals or your products that you used on the job, most of the time it wasn't the products that we used that caused them to get sick. It was the off-gassing from the original problem that they were breathing in prior that caused them to get sick. And that's where them consulting with their family physician, them taking the products because chemical manufacturers get sued all the time. All the time. Every day there's a phone call about a potential lawsuit with a chemical manufacturer if they manufacture any products at all. And it goes down to those products, whether they're deodorizers or whether they're cleaners, didn't make the person sick. What made the person sick was the off-gassing of the problem before we got there that they've been breathing in and breathing in and breathing in. It's like, when do people get sick from asbestos? When do they come down with cancer? They don't come down with it today or tomorrow. It's years down the road. It's what we call a latent reaction. And usually the problem that they have is from that. So to let people know, we have products that fall under a category with the federal government is generally regarded as safe. We'll use, if there's a product that you're uncomfortable with, I'll be happy to either spray it on a business card or take the cap off of the product and let you smell the product. Just go right by I learned that from somebody that truly was chemically sensitive. And they can feel a sensation in their body without getting sick. If they do, you can't use that product in their house. And so, that's why we get an informed consent form signed by the customer for products that we're going to use. And if I have somebody that's that inquisitive, then I'm going to use something that, like Kara said, that's going to fall into the lowest level of toxicity based on the safety data sheets, et cetera. And that might be a botanical, or that might be another product, whatever it is. We're gonna choose that. Or in cleaning, I might go to a vapor steamer that uses no chemicals if I have somebody like that. So the options are there. It's a matter of, what are they willing to pay for? How long is it going to take to do it? Will it achieve, what is their expectations? Will it achieve the desired results we're looking for?
So Gary, let's stick with you on this. What if a job just fails? The customer, the technician goes in, does all he can do, and the job fails. The odors are there, maybe from a cat box that was ignored, several cats in the house. What's the most common issue you're seeing as to why the failure happened? What is the technician not doing?
They're not getting to the actual source. Bottom line, they're not getting to the actual source.
You're making this
Find
real
the
simple.
source.
It's too
Find
simple.
the source. Go ahead.
Too simple. That's too simple.
They have to find the surface that's giving off. It goes back to the spray bottle on hot water. They have to find the surface that's giving off the odor. If I walk into a room and I'm troubleshooting somebody else's problem, or a good example is I open a door to an attic and I smell an odor, and I go up into the attic and I don't smell the odor anymore. Or I open the door to a basement and I smell the odor, and I go into the basement, I don't smell the odor anymore. Why am I smelling it when I open the door? Because I created negative pressure. So I'm pulling the odor, the gas, from a trapped space someplace. I've got to find where that trapped space is. That's where Kara said earlier, ask the questions. When do you smell it? Where do you smell it? Under what conditions do you smell it? So that we can troubleshoot. And it goes back to a spray bottle, hot water, wearing a respirator to keep you wear a respirator to keep your nose from becoming acclimated or accustomed to the odor in this case. Okay. And maybe carry a hair blower with you to take and warm the surface to open the pores. And if you wet and warm the surface and you still don't have an odor, gases coming out, a smell coming out, there's no odor there, find another surface. It took me 3 hours in the house I grew up in that my brother was trying to sell for me to find the odor in the basement, because he couldn't sell the house. Every time they opened the door to the basement, it stunk. You walked down 3 steps, the stink was gone. Turned out to be a trap door that went to the crawl space by the master bedroom, bathroom, and first and second bedroom. And it was from water that pooled in the yard that backed up into the crawl space that now had a sour smell. And you only smelled it when you created the negative pressure pulling from that trap space. Once we solved the crawl space, he sold the house the next day. I could tell stories upon stories upon stories like that.
But I want to ask Kara something. Kara, you've never heard of this negative air issue?
No.
No.
No,
Share your thoughts.
it's like you open it up and boom, it can hit you. Thoughts on the question about, what if efforts seem to fail? I have to agree in most circumstances when I've, people call me and they say they've done X, Y, and Z and there's still a smell, or the client's still complaining of a smell. Got to go back to, is it a psychological odor, or have you missed something? It always, to me, is that it comes back to source, and that, we think we've found the source, but maybe not in its entirety. And so we're focusing our cleaning. And I don't use the word deodorization, by the way. I know you guys use it. It's not a word I use because deodorizers to me sometimes give off the impression that I'm going to create a smell. I'm going to deodorize it like Febreze. And so I just switched my language to odor remediation. And if there is an odor that's still apparent, what are the steps that were taken? What are the products that were used? Were they appropriate for the odor that was, we're dealing with here? And maybe there's are some other techniques or tricks. I'll go in. I have suggested from time to time, although again I don't go crazy with it, but a lot of times maybe a thermal fog or something might be appropriate to just change the way it smells. If we truly believe we've done everything that we needed to do, we followed all of the steps, we believe we've tracked down the entirety of the source, the appropriate thermal fog. I'm always like, step away from the cherry, people. It's not always cherry that we need to go with, but like sometimes just a light fog might then just change the way everything appears to the contractor who's just scratching his head trying to figure this out, and to the client who may or may not still be smelling something. There's other tools or options sometimes.
Appreciate that. So we're about out of time. I just want to cover a couple more points. So Mark, I'm going to go to you on this next question because I think it's important.
Okay.
And you're a nice guy, Mark, so I can't imagine you saying no to a customer. Can you do that? Can you say no?
I think twice in 51 years.
Okay. So here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
When should you say no to a customer when it comes to an odor removal job? When should you say it's not going to work? This relationship, this job, whatever it is, we have to walk away. Does that ever happen? I know Gary's like, he wants to jump on this.
Oh, I do too.
Well, I've come where I've had to flush the carpet because usually it's carpet, a soft floor, and clean it up enough to get them by and let them know that. Obviously, you really want to solve the problem. You don't get all this years experience and this craziness and even writing textbooks and walking away from stuff. You're supposed to be somehow miraculously clever enough to solve it. And I mean, usually the last person people find. I give advice around the country for cleaning for years and never charged for it. So that's why they call me Uncle Mark. They just call me as Uncle Mark. But, I can't solve everything. And if I can make it livable for them for a while, the most stress usually is when they decide that, Gary made a great point, a really good point. Sometimes when they go to sell the house, that matters. Or they go vacate a rental house, that matters. And they want it solved. And sometimes maybe they've lost their job and they're vacating and they don't have the money. That's another stress. They have to be able to pay you for your time and how much can you donate. I'm not trying to get around the question, but sometimes it's a matter of finances. They really just have enough to get by, and that's what you're either going to deal with and do the best you can and hope is acceptable to somebody that's going to make a difference in their lives on a like a soon-to-be ex-landlord or something. And it's tough. Sometimes you just cleaning it alone gets rid of most of the odors. Just cleaning something alone gets rid of probably 70-80% of the problem.
That was a very nice answer from a very nice
way
guy.
around what your question.
Yeah, you did go around it quite a bit,
but it's kind of the best I can answer.
Yeah.
I'm looked as the problem solver because I probably give more free advice to anybody in the country. I don't brag about that, I just do.
Mhm.
And I like to solve problems. I think it's a joy to solve people's problems. I pay to do it. It's just fun to me. And watching the reaction, someone learns something, which is why you're doing this. You want to have the information out to pass on to that person watching this and then pass on to somebody else and hopefully take the time to listen and get all the good information that the other two panelists have also contributed so well with, and to something really good to come out of it. It's like getting paid over and over again, like in insurance. You sell a policy, you're an agent, and you just keep making money on it. Well, information does the same thing for you. And so does education,
Yeah, every company wants all the jobs they can get, usually. So saying no to a job may go against their inclination. But if you aren't paid enough to do the job right, that could be a problem. Gary, I know you want to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I would say, let's talk about sewage.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
okay.
And when we have sewage, or what we call category 3 in water damage, the S500, the standard of care, says that all soft surface must go, must be taken out.
No, just clean my area rug. Just clean it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or wall-to-wall rug. And where does this come in, especially with if we're dealing with a new technician coming out and new company, and they don't want to turn away business. They want apartment business because it's volume. It's low end, but it's volume. Apartment complexes don't want to throw away carpets. They don't want to throw away pad. They want you to clean it. Liability wise, we're running a risk as a cleaner, as a deodorizer. You're running a risk if you don't get rid of it. We're in violation of the standard. So that would be a situation where, if I had $250,000 or $500,000 contract and I have a small spot that I have a problem with, I might have to figure out a way to satisfy that customer so I don't lose my $500,000 contract. By the same token, I don't want to risk people's health. So I find a way to do it. And, it's not something I'd stand in front of a room of people and tell people, save it. But there are methods that, using water claws or using deep extraction tools and flooding the area, reflooding the area, and et cetera, where you might be able to minimize your risk using a sanitizer that's approved for carpet. You might be able to minimize your risk. But that might be one where I'd walk away, where I'd consider, walking away from the situation. Mm-hmm. So again, it's the same thing Mark was talking about. What are their expectations? What are they willing to pay for? Etc. We don't have that problem. Well, we do have that problem. I think Kara will agree in restoration remediation from the standpoint of what insurance companies are willing to pay the contractors for the work. I mean, I just heard of, the hurricanes down in Florida. They just did an expose in 60 Minutes 2 weeks ago where people are coming in with estimates by an independent adjuster of 200,000 plus, and the insurance company's sending them a check for $15,000. So,
yeah,
we've got to get paid for the work we do.
Kara, do you want to talk about sewage? I think we covered it.
I can. I think I would just add, I think that Mark and Gary hit it, that the being paid is important. And if, as a company owner, you're willing to make exceptions to help people out, I think that that's a wonderful, generous thing to do, as long as you are not opening yourself up to liability. I think that liability is the other, again, which is going to be, what we have to think about, like with the example of sewage kind of thing. But the other thought I had on this of when to walk away from a job, there's a saying out there that when people show you, when a person shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And so I often think to myself, if a client is showing me they're crazy, they've given me an opportunity right there to take that and say, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to help you with this. I hope you have a great day. And so when there are those red flags, if somebody's asking me to compromise and doing my job in the way that the standard dictates that I need to do it, if a client is trying to get me to weasel down on the price or negotiate something or cut something out that would then I wouldn't be able to deliver satisfactory service, or lastly, when again they show you they're crazy, that's a good time to exit stage left.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mark, did you have anything to add? You had your hand up there, I think.
Yeah, I just thought of something that touching on the other two said as well. There are times when you're going to get a call from something that means a lot to somebody emotionally. It was great grandma's area rug, and it was somebody's recliner or something you can actually take apart. And there may be times where you're going to do the very best you can because emotionally they are so tied in it. My dad lived in that chair for years, and you've got to clean it. You somehow got to get a smell out, or there's a death or something, and there's body fluids. They want that off, but they really want to. That chair means a lot to them. You've got to do something, but a lot has to do with the trust of the customer. I love what Kara said, and she's right on that. She really is. I'm not being nice. She really is. But sometimes that customer has a lot of emotion on that item and they just want it livable because they can't let go of that item. I know an area rug, you can take it to a plant and submerge it in the bath and do all those things. It's a lot more thorough. It's a lot more trustworthy, but your grandkids may be laying on that thing playing with their dolls and cars someday. You really have to look at the long term. But boy, if they don't want to part with that thing, you might be their last resort to be that hero. And you got to cross between the hero and how much you trust them. And it's a call, and it can be really very much in an individual case by case basis, and usually is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So let's wrap up with this question, and let's have just Gary handle it. Gary, can you talk about the health factors, the dangers that can come from certain odors, the off-gassing, what that could do to the health of people?
So when it comes to odors are gases that come off of a source. With those gases that come off of a source, you can also have potential what we call toxins. Toxins being could be in the form of different kinds of chemicals. Usually that's what you have, because residues are made up of all different types of chemical compounds, not just in a fire, not just in a bacterial situation, but it's a combination of things when we're talking about tobacco, when we're talking about cannabis, when we're talking about death scene, being dead animals or dead bodies. When we're talking about urine, you still have potential hazards. And if people don't wear some sort of gloves to protect their skin, if people don't wear something to protect their eyes, vapors can enter our bodies in three different ways: through our mouth, through our nose, and absorption into our eyes and our skin. And if we don't protect ourselves, even sometimes, like Mark, works with carpets and upholstery all the time, sometimes carpets and upholstery can have residues that can potentially hurt somebody. Is there blood in the carpet? Is there blood in the and when there's blood, we have to treat it according to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration as a potential hazard. We have to treat it as if it's infectious. And so we have to have, if it's a respirator, we have to have the right respirator, the right cartridges. If it's half mask, we have to have some sort of a shield. Just like COVID, when we did COVID, well, we found out that COVID was potentially toxic to a lot of people, hazardous to a lot of people, and some things can go airborne, and then when they go airborne, they can get either absorbed or inhaled or etc. So we have to have the proper safety precautions. If we don't have the proper safety precautions, somebody can get sick. And that's anybody that's in there while we're doing the work or before we did the work, etc. It could be something as simple as an N95 mask. Okay, for a consumer that can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or any other store that carries them and Canadian Tire, and they can get, protection. But it's important that we understand that we need skin protection, we need eye protection, respiratory protection is probably the biggest thing. If we're dealing with a situation where that can potentially affect us, and everybody thinks that their immune system is rock solid. Well, how about all those people that have asthma, or all those people that have Crohn's or colitis or diabetes or emphysema, etc.? That means that they have weaker immune systems and they're going to be negatively impacted. And that could be by smells, and that could be by the gases, not just the smells, but the toxins that can potentially be in them.
Well, folks, we are out of time. Obviously, all of this technical information, put it all together. You do the work, you follow the directions, you do the best you can for your customers, good communication, and you need to charge for your time. So this is a great revenue driver as well for companies that engage in odor control services. So can't be a charity. Well, Mark can be a charity, but most can be a charity. Have to charge for what we're doing. But thank you all for your time today. And look, for those watching this, I assume you teach online classes and in person. So
yes, we do.
All right. So for those watching, I vouch for Mark, Kara, and Gary. They will teach you more if you take one of their classes. Thank you all.